With your indulgence, I have the honor of representing all of my colleagues, so I'm going to represent them today with things that are on their mind as well. Secretary Blinken, you opened today talking about the strong alliance with France, but after professing at NATO that America is back to all the Europeans, what do you say to an ally, France, that feels that this agreement today stabs them in the back by going and providing nuclear submarines to the Australians? For Secretary Austin, after 2 days of grueling testimony on the Hill, Secretary Blinken was grilled about questions that really involved Pentagon decisions and decisions by other agencies, such as the closing of Bagram, the intelligence assessments, the failure to train up the Afghan army as had been expected. Should the Pentagon also be held accountable for some of the failures in Afghanistan? And for both of you, after those NATO meetings in June, you heard very strong objections from Secretary Blinken to a total withdrawal. You came back, and according to the Woodward-Costa book, you revised some of your proposals and suggested a slower withdrawal, leaving a footprint, a smaller footprint. Secretary Austin, according to the book, you suggested a slower withdrawal, a gated proposal perhaps to provide room for negotiations with the Taliban. So, according to the book, you also had a deep analysis of a worst-case scenario where al-Qaeda would indeed reform and be able to eventually pose a threat to the homeland. So what does that say about the assessments and about the decisions that were eventually made to withdraw as you did, unilaterally without proper consultations, or at least in contradiction to what you heard at NATO in Brussels? And Secretary Austin, with your indulgence, this is our first opportunity to ask you to respond to those Republicans on the Hill, including, of course, the former president, demanding the firing of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm happy to start and then hand it over to Lloyd. With regard to France, first of all, Andrea, as I noted, as the President said last night in announcing this initiative, we strongly welcome European countries playing an important role in the Indo-Pacific. We look forward to continued close cooperation with NATO, with the EU, and others in this endeavor. One of the hallmarks of the conversations that Lloyd and I both had over these many months in Europe, at NATO, as well as with the EU, has been their own increased focus and attention on the Indo-Pacific and the work that we can do together in that regard. And as I said, France in particular is a vital partner on this, on so many other things, stretching back a long, long time, but also stretching forward into the future, as we've discussed in depth in my many conversations with my French counterpart, President Biden, with President Macron, including at the NATO summit, at the G7, and other places. And we want to find every opportunity now to deepen transatlantic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and around the world. We've been in touch with French counterparts in the last 24, 48 hours to discuss AUKUS, including before the announcement. I'll leave it to our Australian partners to describe why they sought this new technology. But as the President said, and I want to emphasize again, we cooperate incredibly closely with France on many shared priorities in the Indo-Pacific, but also beyond, around the world. We're going to continue to do so. We place fundamental value on that relationship, on that partnership, and we will carry it forward in the days ahead. With regard to Afghanistan, a couple of things. First, as Secretary of Defense noted as well, we both went very early, well before the President's decision on Afghanistan, to NATO to spend time with our NATO allies and other partners, to listen intently to them about their views on the way forward in Afghanistan, views that not only did we listen to very carefully, but we shared directly with President Biden, and they very much factored into our thinking and into the decisions he made in Afghanistan. Different allies had a variety of perspectives on the way forward. Some talked about a conditions-based withdrawal. That certainly came up in the conversations that we had. But each of them, to an ally, to a partner, recognized that had we chosen to stay beyond May 1st, or not to make clear by then that we were withdrawing pursuant to the agreement negotiated by the previous administration, an agreement that led to the Taliban not attacking our forces or allied or partner forces from the time of the agreement until the planned withdrawal on May 1st, and that led to it not attacking the major cities in Afghanistan. They knew and expressed to a partner that should we stay beyond May 1st or not make clear that we were in the process of leaving, that the attacks, not just on us, but on allies and partners would resume, that the offensive against Afghanistan cities, which we've seen in recent months, would commence, and that we would be faced with the decision of what to do about that, and that decision would have involved sending substantially more forces into Afghanistan, under fire, taking casualties for some indefinite length of time, and again, with little prospect of doing more than perhaps restoring the stalemate that had been in place before. So when the President made his decision, we went back to NATO. And at that session, NATO immediately and unanimously endorsed the decision. We went in together, we agreed that we would leave together, and that's exactly what we proceeded to do.
Andrea, with respect to testimony, as you probably know, I am scheduled to testify in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee on the 28th of this month, and then the House Armed Services Committee on the 29th of this month. And so I will appear, as Tony did, before my respective committee and have an opportunity to address some of the issues that you raised. On the issue of what's in the book with respect to my activities and Secretary Blinken's activities, I won't confirm or deny what's in the book because I've not read the book, but again, and I won't comment on what's in the book. But what I will say, as Tony has just mentioned, that we followed a rigorous process where commanders and other players in the NSC establishment were able to provide their inputs. And with those inputs, the President made his decision. And then following that decision, as the Secretary of State has said, you know, we went to NATO to engage our NATO allies. And then beyond that, once we laid the plan for retrograding our equipment and people, we synchronized that plan with our allies to make sure that we had everyone and everything accounted for. And finally, regarding General Milley, again, all of what's in that book happened before I became Secretary of Defense, so I can't comment on that as well, and certainly I won't comment on what's in the book. I have confidence in General Milley.
And what about the demands from the Republicans? What would you say to them?
I don't have a comment there, Andrea. So.
We'll turn to Greg Jennett of ABC.